The ballroom was dazzling. Crystal chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling like frozen fireworks, casting prismatic light across marble floors so polished you could see your own betrayal reflected back at you. And trust me, I was looking at mine. 200 people filled the Sterling Corporation's annual gala. Executives in tailored tuxedos, their wives dripping in diamonds that cost more than my childhood home. Waiters gliding between them like shadows, trays balanced with champagne that probably cost $50 a glass. I was one of those shadows. My name is Diana, and I was wearing a polyester uniform that scratched my neck and shoes that were 2 sizes too small because the catering company had run out of my size. My hair was pulled back so tight it gave me a headache. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching my husband pretend I didn't exist. Arthur stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of senior directors, laughing at something one of them said with that fake, performative laugh he practiced in the mirror. I knew because I'd heard him. His arm was wrapped around Carla Sterling, the former owner's daughter, a 26-year-old woman who thought Daddy's company was her birthright and that my husband was her golden ticket to keeping it. She didn't know Arthur was married. None of them did. Because Arthur told everyone at the office he was single. I watched him lean down to whisper something in Carla's ear. She giggled, touching his chest. My chest tightened, but I kept walking, tray balanced on my palm, weaving through the crowd. "Excuse me, miss." A director flagged me down. I smiled that service industry smile, the one that doesn't reach your eyes, and handed him a glass of champagne. That's when Arthur saw me. His eyes widened for just a fraction of a second before his expression hardened into something cold. He said something to the group, and they laughed. Then he turned, deliberately stepping backward into my path. I tried to sidestep him. I really did. But he moved with me, and suddenly his elbow slammed into my tray. 3 glasses of champagne, 2 martinis, and a Manhattan went flying. The liquid arced through the air in slow motion, splashing across my uniform, soaking through to my skin. Ice cubes clattered across the marble floor, and one tiny splash, barely a drop, landed on Arthur's shoe. "Look what you did!" His voice cut through the music like a knife. The conversations around us stopped. Heads turned. "You clumsy idiot. Do you have any idea how much these shoes cost?" My face burned. 200 pairs of eyes were on me now. Judging. Pitying. Some amused. Arthur bent down and grabbed a napkin from a nearby table. He threw it at my feet. "Clean it. Now." Carla covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking with laughter. "Oh my God, Arthur! She completely drenched you!" "These are Italian leather," Arthur said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Probably worth more than she makes in a month. On your knees, sweetheart." "Clean my shoe." The room was silent now except for the quartet in the corner, still playing Mozart like nothing was wrong. I looked at the napkin on the floor, then at Arthur's shoe with its single drop of champagne, then at his face, that smug, satisfied expression he wore when he thought he'd won, and I looked at my watch. 8 o'clock. I straightened my spine. I didn't pick up the napkin. "I'm sorry, sir," I said clearly, and I watched confusion flicker across his face because my voice didn't sound submissive anymore. But my shift as a waitress just ended. Arthur's eyebrows drew together. "Excuse me?" I reached behind my back and untied my apron. The polyester uniform was loose, deliberately loose, because underneath I was wearing something else entirely, something red, something that cost more than Arthur's entire wardrobe. I let the apron fall to the floor next to the napkin he'd thrown at me. "My shift as a waitress ended," I repeated, pulling the hairpins from my bun. My hair tumbled down in dark waves. "But my shift as CEO just started." But before I tell you how I completely destroyed my husband's life in front of 200 witnesses, if you love stories about revenge served ice cold, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next is going to blow your mind. And trust me, you don't want to miss the part where he finds out exactly who I really am. Let me take you back 6 months, back to when I still believed my husband loved me. We met in college. Arthur was charming, ambitious, always talking about his dreams of climbing the corporate ladder. I was studying business, but I came from a modest background. My parents were teachers. We lived paycheck to paycheck. Arthur knew this. He said it didn't matter. He said he loved me for who I was, not what I had. We got married 3 years ago in a small ceremony. Nothing fancy. Arthur said we should save money for our future. I agreed. I always agreed back then. When Arthur got hired at Sterling Corporation as a junior analyst, he was ecstatic. It was his dream job, a prestigious firm with old money roots and connections that could launch a career into the stratosphere. I was happy for him. I threw him a celebration dinner with my limited budget, chicken and pasta, a bottle of cheap wine. He barely touched it. He was already thinking about the next step. The first few months were normal. Arthur would come home and tell me about his day, about the office politics, about his boss, Mr. Sterling, the founder and CEO, a man in his 70s who'd built the company from nothing and was now thinking about retirement. Then Arthur started working late, really late. 11, midnight, sometimes not coming home until 2 in the morning. He said it was important to show dedication, to be the last one in the office. I believed him. I packed him lunches, ironed his shirts, made sure he looked perfect every morning. But then the lies started, small ones at first. I have a business dinner tonight. Don't wait up. But when I called the office, his secretary said he'd left at 5. Or, I need to take a client to that new steakhouse. But the credit card showed he'd taken someone to the most romantic restaurant in the city, a place with candlelight and violinists. I confronted him once. Just once. Arthur, who were you with at La Maison Rouge last Tuesday? He didn't even look up from his phone. A client. Why are you checking my credit cards? That's controlling behavior, Diana. Very unattractive. I felt small. Crazy. Maybe I was being controlling. Maybe this was just what corporate life looked like. So I stopped asking questions. Then came the day Arthur told me I was embarrassing. We were getting ready for a company picnic. I'd put on my nicest sundress, the blue one with white flowers that Arthur had once said made my eyes look beautiful. I was excited. I'd finally get to meet his colleagues, put faces to the names he mentioned. He looked at me and frowned. You're not wearing that. What's wrong with it? Diana, these are important people. They dress well. They have style. You look like you're going to a church bake sale. I felt my face flush. This is my nicest dress. Exactly my point. He sighed like I was a problem he had to solve. Actually, you know what? I don't think you should come. These corporate events, they're really more for networking. You'd be bored. But I want to meet your friends. They're colleagues, not friends. And honestly, Diana, you wouldn't fit in. You don't know how to talk to these people. You'd say something embarrassing, and it would reflect badly on me. That was the moment. The moment I should have left. But instead, I stayed home. I watched television and ate leftover pizza and told myself that Arthur was just stressed, that his job was demanding, that I needed to be more understanding. The lies got bigger. He started telling people at work he was single. I found out by accident when a secretary from his office called our home phone looking for Arthur's roommate because she'd mixed up the numbers. When I said I was his wife, there was a long, confused silence. His wife? But Arthur said Oh my God, I'm so sorry. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, something cold settling in my stomach. When Arthur came home that night, I confronted him. Why does your office think you're single? He didn't even have the decency to look guilty. Because my personal life is none of their business. And honestly, Diana, being married doesn't exactly make me look dynamic and available. It makes me look settled. Boring. I make you look boring. You said it, not me. He loosened his tie and headed for the bedroom. I'm tired. I don't want to fight about this. But we didn't fight, because I didn't know how to fight anymore. He'd spent 3 years making me smaller, quieter, less. I'd forgotten how to take up space. The money was another issue. Arthur made a good salary, $75,000 a year, which wasn't Fortune 500 money, but it was comfortable. More than comfortable for 2 people with no kids. But somehow, we were always broke. Arthur needed new suits, Italian shoes, a luxury watch because, in business, people notice these things. A sports car lease because I can't show up to client meetings in your old Honda. Meanwhile, I was wearing the same 5 outfits, shopping at thrift stores, counting coins to buy groceries. I took a part-time job at a bookstore just to have my own money. Arthur hated it. "It's humiliating," he said. "People might find out my wife works retail. What does that say about my ability to provide?" "We need the money, Arthur. We need you to not embarrass me." I quit the next day and went back to counting coins. Then, 3 months ago, everything changed. I got a letter from a law firm in Boston. My great-aunt Miriam, my father's aunt, a woman I'd met maybe twice in my entire life, had passed away. She'd been an eccentric woman, never married, lived alone in a massive house filled with cats and antiques. My father used to joke that she was secretly rich but too cheap to spend it. Turns out, it wasn't a joke. Aunt Miriam left me everything. The house, which sold for $1.2 million, her investment portfolio, worth another $3.8 million, some antique jewelry appraised at $600,000, and a note, handwritten in shaky cursive. To Diana, the only one who sent me birthday cards. Use it wisely. $5.6 million. I sat in the lawyer's office, staring at the number on the paperwork, wondering if this was a prank, but it wasn't. It was real. The money was real. And I didn't tell Arthur. I know what you're thinking. How could I not tell my husband? We were married. What's mine is his, right? But something stopped me. Some instinct, some small voice in the back of my head that had been trying to warn me for years. The voice that said, "Wait, watch, see what he does when he thinks you have nothing." So I set up a separate bank account. I invested most of the money conservatively, let it sit and grow. And I watched my husband. I watched him flirt with the intern at his company holiday party. I watched him forget our anniversary but remember to buy himself a new Rolex. I watched him come home later and later, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. And then, 2 weeks ago, Arthur came home with news. He was grinning, practically vibrating with excitement. "Diana, you're looking at the future CEO of Sterling Corporation." I looked up from the book I was reading. "What?" "Mr. Sterling is retiring. He's selling the company, and I'm in the running to take over." "That's wonderful, Arthur. I'm so proud of you." He barely heard me. He was already on his phone, texting someone. "This is it. This is everything I've worked for. I just need to seal the deal." "How do you seal it?" He looked at me then and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "I've been dating the boss's daughter, Carla Sterling. If she likes me, Daddy will hand me the company." The world tilted. "You've been dating someone?" "Relax, it's not serious. It's strategic. You understand strategy, don't you, Diana?" I understood. I understood that my husband was a stranger. "Does she know you're married?" Arthur laughed. Actually laughed. "God, no. Are you insane? She thinks I'm single and ambitious and completely devoted to her, which I will be once I get what I need." "And then what?" He shrugged. "Then I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll keep you around for appearances. Maybe not. Depends on what's better for my career." That night, after Arthur fell asleep, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to a divorce attorney, the best in the city. I retained her immediately. The second was to my financial advisor. I asked about acquiring a controlling stake in a privately held corporation if one became available. The third was to Mr. Sterling's personal assistant. We'd met once at a charity event Arthur hadn't invited me to, but I'd volunteered at. She remembered me. I asked if Mr. Sterling might be interested in a private conversation about the future of his company. She said she'd ask. 2 days later, I was sitting in Mr. Sterling's home office, a room filled with dark wood and leather and the smell of expensive cigars. He was a distinguished man with silver hair and sharp eyes that had probably seen every corporate game in the book. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, gesturing to a chair. "My assistant said you wanted to discuss my company. I'll be honest, I'm curious. Your husband works for me, doesn't he?" "He does, and I need to tell you something about your daughter." I told him everything. The affair, the manipulation, Arthur's plan to use Carla as a stepping stone. I showed him the text messages I'd found on Arthur's phone, screenshots I'd taken while he was in the shower, messages to his college buddy. Playing the long game with the boss's daughter. "She's annoying, but she'll get me the corner office." Mr. Sterling's face remained neutral, but his knuckles went white on the armrest. Why are you showing me this? Because I understand you're selling the company, and I'd like to buy it. He blinked. You... Me. I slid a folder across his desk. My financial statements. My portfolio. Letters of recommendation from 3 major investment firms. I have the capital. I have business training. And I have something your other buyers don't have. What's that? A very personal reason to make this company succeed. And a very personal reason to remove the cancer that's been growing in your management structure. Mr. Sterling picked up the folder. He read for a long time. Then he looked at me, and for the first time, he smiled. Mrs. Bennet, I think we have a lot to discuss. We negotiated for a week. I bought 51% of the company's shares for $4.2 million. Mr. Sterling would stay on as an advisor for 6 months. The sale would be announced at the annual gala. There's one condition, Mr. Sterling said when we signed the papers. I want to be there when your husband finds out. I haven't had this much fun in years. I agreed. And that brings us to 3 days before the gala, when Arthur came home and told me his plan. Diana, I need you to do something for me. He was pacing the living room, excited. The catering company for the gala is short-staffed. They need extra waiters. I told them you'd help. I looked up from my laptop. You want me to work as a waitress at your company party? It's good money, and honestly, we could use it. Unless you want to keep eating ramen. Arthur, I can't. Yes, you can. You just don't want to. Because you're selfish. He stood over me. I'm about to become CEO of a major corporation, Diana. This is the most important night of my life, and you can't even do this one thing to support me. You want me to serve drinks while you're there with Carla? His jaw tightened. I want you to be useful for once. And I want you to stay out of my way. Don't talk to me. Don't acknowledge me. Pretend you don't know me. Can you do that? Or is even that too complicated? I could have said no. Could have told him everything right then, but where's the fun in that? I'll do it, I said quietly. I'll stay out of your way. Arthur smiled. Good girl, wear something plain. You're working, not attending. And that's how I ended up in a polyester uniform, carrying champagne for people who didn't know I owned the building they were standing in. But I wasn't just working that night. I was performing, and the finale was going to be spectacular. The morning of the gala, I woke up at 5 a.m. Arthur was still asleep, snoring softly, one arm thrown over his face. I looked at him in the dim light filtering through the curtains and tried to remember when I'd stopped loving him. Was it a single moment? Or had it been 1,000 tiny deaths? Each small cruelty killing a little piece of what we'd had until nothing remained but resentment and resolve. I got out of bed quietly and went to the closet. In the very back, behind winter coats and boxes of old textbooks, I'd hidden a garment bag. Inside was a dress I'd bought 2 weeks ago. Valentino, deep crimson red. It cost $8,000, which was more than I'd spent on clothes in the last 3 years combined. I'd also bought shoes, Louboutin heels, black with red soles, a diamond bracelet, simple and elegant, pearl earrings that had belonged to Aunt Miriam. I'd had my hair done yesterday, a treatment that would keep it sleek and perfect even under the stress of a waitressing shift. The plan was simple. Wear the catering uniform over the dress. The uniform was deliberately oversized, loose enough to hide what was underneath. Suffer through Arthur's humiliation. Accumulate evidence. And when the moment was right, reveal everything. I'd learned something important in those weeks of secret meetings with Mr. Sterling and his lawyers. Revenge isn't about impulse. It's about patience. It's about letting your enemy think they've won right up until the moment you take everything away. Arthur woke up around 8. He didn't say good morning. He never did anymore. Remember, 6 p.m. sharp at the Sterling building, he said, heading for the shower. The catering manager will give you your assignment. And Diana, don't screw this up. There are going to be very important people there. I won't screw it up, I promised, and I meant it. I arrived at the Sterling Corporation building at 5:30 p.m. The ballroom was already being set up. Round tables with white linens, centerpieces of white roses and gold accents, a stage at the front with a podium and microphone. The chandeliers were being tested, their crystals throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. The catering manager, a harried woman named Susan, barely looked at me. "You're the last-minute addition, Bennett." "Yes, ma'am." "Okay, you'll be on champagne duty. Float around the room, keep the glasses full, smile pretty. Don't engage in conversation beyond, 'Would you like a drink?' Got it?" "Got it." She handed me the uniform: black pants, white shirt, black vest, bow tie. I went to the women's bathroom and locked myself in a stall. First, I put on the red dress. It fit perfectly, hugging my curves, the neckline just low enough to be elegant without being inappropriate. Then I carefully put the uniform on over it. The pants were loose. The vest hid the dress completely. Perfect. I braided my hair and pinned it up in a severe bun. No makeup except for waterproof mascara and a nude lip. I needed to look plain, forgettable, invisible. When I looked in the mirror, I saw exactly what Arthur wanted me to be: a servant, a nobody. I smiled at my reflection. Not for much longer. The guests started arriving at 7. I watched from my position near the bar as they filed in. Men in tuxedos that cost more than cars, women in gowns that sparkled under the lights, air kisses and fake laughs, and the constant hum of networking disguised as conversation. Arthur arrived at 7:15 with Carla on his arm. She was wearing pink. A bright bubblegum pink ball gown with so much tulle, she looked like she was drowning in cotton candy. Diamonds at her throat, wrists, ears. Too much. Everything about Carla was too much. Arthur, on the other hand, looked good. I hated that I noticed. Perfectly tailored tuxedo, hair styled with just enough product to look effortless. That confident smile he wore when he thought he was winning. They made their entrance like royalty. Carla giggled at something Arthur said, touching his chest the way she always did. Possessive. Marking her territory. I picked up a tray of champagne and started my rounds. For the first hour, I was invisible. Exactly as planned. Guests took glasses from my tray without looking at my face. I heard fragments of conversations, business deals, gossip, complaints about the stock market. Nobody noticed the waitress. But Arthur noticed me. I saw him do a double take when I passed near his group. Recognition flickered across his face, followed immediately by irritation. He excused himself from the conversation and intercepted me near the chocolate fountain. "What are you doing?" he hissed, grabbing my elbow and pulling me aside. "Working, like you told me to." "I can see that. I meant, what are you doing near my section? I told you to stay away from me." "The champagne doesn't discriminate, Arthur. Everyone needs drinks." His grip tightened. "Don't be smart. It doesn't suit you. Stay on the other side of the room. If Carla sees you talking to me, she might ask questions. Questions like why her boyfriend is touching the help." His eyes narrowed. "Diana, I swear to God, if you ruin this for me, you'll what? Throw me out. Make me sleep on the couch. Oh wait, you already do that." I pulled my arm free. "Don't worry, Arthur. I know my place." I walked away, my heart pounding. That was dangerous. Too confrontational. But God, it felt good. I watched Arthur return to Carla, watched him whisper something that made her laugh, probably blaming the clumsy waitress Ashen for the interruption. She kissed his cheek, leaving a pink lipstick mark he didn't bother to wipe off. The evening progressed. Dinner was served. A 4-course meal I'd helped plan in my secret meetings with the event coordinator. Seared scallops, filet mignon, roasted vegetables, and a chocolate torte that was supposedly Mr. Sterling's favorite. I worked through dinner service, refilling water glasses, clearing plates. I was good at being invisible now. I'd been practicing for 3 years. But then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Arthur stood up from his table, champagne glass in hand, and clinked it with a fork. The room quieted. "Then if I could have everyone's attention," he said, his voice carrying that smooth confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "I know we're all here to celebrate the future of Sterling Corporation, and that announcement is coming soon. But I just want to take a moment to thank some people." He proceeded to give a speech about mentorship and opportunity and how grateful he was to Mr. Sterling for believing in him. It was well rehearsed, probably practiced in front of a mirror. And of course, Arthur continued, turning to Carla with a smile that made my stomach turn. I want to thank this beautiful woman for showing me that success isn't just about business. It's about having the right person by your side. Carla beamed. The room applauded politely. I stood in the shadows with my tray and watched my husband propose a toast to his future with another woman. To new beginnings, Arthur said, raising his glass. To new beginnings, the room echoed. I didn't drink. I was working. And besides, my new beginning was going to be much more interesting than his. After the toast, Arthur was surrounded by well-wishers. I watched him soak in the attention, that gleam in his eye that said he thought he'd already won. Carla clung to his arm, introducing him to her father's friends, playing the role of the power couple. That's when Mr. Sterling caught my eye from across the room. He was standing near the stage, talking to someone, but he looked at me and gave the slightest nod, the signal. Everything was in place. I set down my tray and went to the bathroom, locked myself in the same stall as before. My hands were shaking as I removed the uniform, carefully folding it and setting it aside. The red dress emerged like a butterfly from a cocoon. I let my hair down, the braid falling away into waves I'd carefully set that morning. Applied the lipstick I'd hidden in my bra, a deep red that matched the dress, put on the jewelry, stepped into the Louboutins. When I looked in the mirror this time, I didn't see a servant. I saw a CEO. I saw someone who'd been underestimated her entire marriage and was about to make that the most expensive mistake Arthur had ever made. I left the bathroom and made my way through the back corridors of the building, the ones the staff used. I needed to time this perfectly. The announcement was scheduled for 8:30. It was 8:15. I found a quiet corner where I could watch the ballroom without being seen. Arthur was at the main table now, sitting next to Carla, his hand on her knee under the table. She was feeding him bites of her dessert, and he was laughing, playing the devoted boyfriend. My phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Sterling. Ready? I typed back, ready. At 8:20, the lights dimmed slightly. A spotlight illuminated the stage. Mr. Sterling walked up to the podium, and the room fell silent. Good evening, everyone, he began, his voice warm and commanding. Thank you all for being here tonight. As many of you know, I've spent 45 years building Sterling Corporation. It's been my life's work, my passion, my legacy. But all good things must come to an end, and at 73, I've decided it's time to pass the torch. The room was absolutely silent. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Over the past few months, I've been in negotiations to sell the company. I've met with numerous potential buyers, each promising to uphold the values and vision that Sterling Corporation was founded on. And I'm happy to announce that we have found the perfect person to lead us into the future. Arthur sat up straighter. He'd fixed his bow tie and put on what he probably thought was a humble yet confident expression. Carla squeezed his hand. This person, Mr. Sterling continued, has shown exceptional business acumen, a deep understanding of our industry, and most importantly, a genuine commitment to the people who make this company great. Someone who understands that leadership isn't about power, it's about responsibility. Arthur started to stand. Several people near him smiled, preparing to applaud. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sterling said, I'd like to introduce you to the new majority owner of Sterling Corporation. The spotlight began to move, sweeping across the room, searching. Arthur was fully standing now, buttoning his jacket, ready for his moment. The spotlight passed over him, kept moving. Confusion flickered across Arthur's face. The light swept past the main tables, past the bar, past the chocolate fountain, and stopped on me. I was standing at the edge of the ballroom, near the entrance, where I'd positioned myself for maximum dramatic effect. The red dress caught the light like fire. Every eye in the room turned to look. Arthur's mouth fell open. Diana, I heard him say, though it came out more like a question. Like he wasn't sure the laws of physics allowed for what he was seeing. I smiled and started walking. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. My heels clicked on the marble floor, each step echoing in the sudden silence. Carla was staring at me with her mouth open. Who is that? Arthur had gone completely white. That's the waitress. Please welcome, Mr. Sterling said, his eyes twinkling with barely suppressed amusement. Mrs. Diana Bennett. I climbed the stairs to the stage. Mr. Sterling extended his hand, and I shook it firmly. Then I turned to face the room. 200 people staring at me. Arthur, frozen halfway between sitting and standing. Carla, confused and getting more confused by the second. I picked up the microphone. Good evening, I said. I know many of you are surprised. Some of you are wondering who I am. Well, let me introduce myself properly. I looked directly at Arthur. My name is Diana Bennett, and I just bought this company. Let me rewind for a moment, because what you didn't see was the 3 hours before that dramatic reveal. The 3 hours where I let Arthur humiliate me over and over again, knowing that every word, every sneer, every casual cruelty was digging his grave deeper. Let me take you back to 7:45 p.m., about 45 minutes before Mr. Sterling's announcement. I was standing near the bar, tray in hand, when Arthur spotted me again, but this time, Carla was with him. You there? Arthur called, snapping his fingers at me like I was a dog. Waitress! I turned, keeping my expression neutral. Yes, sir, Carla giggled. Arthur, you don't have to be so formal. She's just the help. Exactly, Arthur said, walking over with Carla on his arm. Which is why she needs to understand her place. What's your name? I could have said my name. Could have ended it right there. But I wanted to see how far he'd go. How low he'd sink when he thought there were no consequences. Diana, sir. Diana. That's a pretty name for someone in your position. He looked at Carla and winked, like they were sharing a private joke. Diana, my girlfriend and I need you to do something. See that table over there? The one with all the senior directors. Yes, sir. I need you to personally serve that table for the rest of the evening. Make sure their glasses are always full, their plates are cleared immediately, and most importantly, make sure they notice how attentive the service is. Can you handle that? Of course, sir. Good, because if you mess this up, if you spill anything, if you're anything less than perfect, I'll make sure you're fired. Do you understand? I understood perfectly. Arthur wanted me to perform for the people who would theoretically be his subordinates after the big announcement. He wanted to show them that he could command service, that he had power even over the catering staff. It was a dominance display like a peacock spreading its feathers. I understand, sir. I won't let you down. Carla pulled at Arthur's arm. Come on, baby. Let's go talk to Daddy. He said he wants to introduce you to some investors. They walked away, and I heard Carla say, That waitress is kind of pretty, don't you think? In a boring way. Arthur laughed. Please, she's nothing. Probably works 3 jobs just to make rent. People like that. They're invisible. They serve their purpose and disappear. I gripped my tray so hard my knuckles went white. But I smiled. Because in about an hour, Arthur was going to learn exactly how visible I could be. I made my way to the director's table. 8 people, all men in their 50s and 60s. Old guard Sterling Corporation executives who'd been with the company for decades. They were discussing quarterly projections and market volatility, the kind of conversation Arthur desperately wanted to be part of. Gentlemen, I said softly, approaching with my tray. May I offer you some champagne? Thank you, dear, one of them said without looking up. I served them, moving efficiently around the table, making sure every glass was filled to the perfect level, not too full, not too empty. As I worked, I listened. So, Robert, one director was saying to another, what do you think about this whole sale business? Think Sterling's really going to hand the company over to young Bennett? Robert snorted. Arthur? That kid's a climber. Good at office politics. Terrible at actual work. He's been riding on charm and Sterling's daughter for months. You think Sterling doesn't see that? Sterling's not stupid. He built this company from nothing. You really think he'd hand it over to some social climber just because he's dating Carla? No, there's something else going on. Like what? No idea. But I'll tell you this. If Arthur Bennett becomes CEO, I'm retiring early. I'm not taking orders from someone whose biggest skill is sucking up. They all laughed. I refilled Robert's champagne and moved on, filing that conversation away. Arthur had no idea how much his colleagues despised him. For the next hour, I was the perfect servant. I anticipated needs before they were spoken. I cleared plates silently. I refilled glasses at exactly the right moment. And I endured every casual dismissal, every ignored thank you, every moment of being treated like furniture. But then Arthur decided to escalate. It was 8:15 p.m. 15 minutes before Mr. Sterling's announcement. I was clearing dessert plates from the director's table when Arthur appeared beside me. "Diana," he said loudly, making sure the directors could hear. "And I need you to do something for me." "Yes, sir." He pulled out his phone and held it up, showing me a photo of a wine bottle. "This is a 1998 Chateau Margaux. I want you to go to the wine cellar and bring up 3 bottles. Can you remember that? 1998 Chateau Margaux? 3 bottles." I looked at the photo. I knew wines. I'd learned about them during my secret business meetings, part of teaching myself how to navigate the world Arthur thought I didn't belong in. The wine he was asking for cost roughly $2,000 per bottle. "Sir, that's a very expensive wine. Are you authorized?" "Are you questioning me?" Arthur's voice went hard. The directors were watching now, interested. "I'm about to be CEO of this company. I can order whatever wine I want. Now go get it, or I'll have you fired for insubordination." I could have told him the truth right then. Could have said, "Actually, Arthur, I already own this company, and you're not authorized to breathe without my permission. But where's the fun in that?" "Yes, sir, right away." I went to the wine cellar, a climate-controlled room in the basement that housed thousands of bottles. I found the Chateau Margaux, 3 bottles of deep Burgundy perfection. As I was putting them on a serving tray, my phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Sterling. He just tried to order $6,000 worth of wine on his expense account before he even knows he's been passed over. This man is unbelievable. I texted back. "Should I bring it?" "Bring it. Let him think he's won. The fall will be so much sweeter." I brought the wine back up. Arthur was standing with Carla and the directors, clearly in the middle of an embellished story about some business deal he'd supposedly closed. He stopped talking when he saw me. "There she is. Took you long enough?" He took the bottles from my tray without a thank you and held them up for the directors to see. "Gentlemen, I thought we'd celebrate tonight's announcement properly. 1998 Margaux. One of the finest wines in the world." One of the directors, Robert, raised an eyebrow. "That's a $2,000 bottle of Bennett," feeling confident. "I'm feeling victorious," Arthur said, then looked at me. "Diana, open these and pour them. And for God's sake, don't spill any. This wine costs more than you make in a month." Actually, with the interest from my investments, I made more in a day than that wine cost. But I didn't say that. I opened the first bottle with the sommelier knife from my pocket, moving with practiced precision. As I poured the first glass for one of the directors, Arthur was watching me like a hawk, probably hoping I'd make a mistake so he could publicly berate me. But I didn't make mistakes. Not anymore. As I poured, Arthur continued talking. "You know what I've learned in business?" he said to the directors. "It's all about recognizing hierarchy. Knowing your place and making sure others know theirs. Some people are meant to lead. Others are meant to serve. It's just the natural order." He looked at me meaningfully, and I knew he was really talking about our marriage, about how he saw me, as someone meant to serve. "That's an interesting philosophy," Robert said dryly. "What happens when the servant turns out to be smarter than the master?" Arthur laughed. "That doesn't happen in real life, Robert. That's just wishful thinking from people who can't accept their station." I finished pouring and stepped back. Arthur took his glass and raised it. "To hierarchy, and to knowing your place." The directors drank, but I noticed several of them exchanged glances. They weren't stupid. They could see what Arthur was, even if he couldn't. Carla pulled at Arthur's sleeve. "Baby, it's almost time. Daddy's going to make the announcement soon. Are you nervous?" "Nervous? Please. I was born for this moment." That's when I heard the lights dimming. The announcement was about to begin. This was it. But Arthur wasn't done with me yet. As I turned to leave, He grabbed my wrist. Wait, Diana, before you go, I want you to do one more thing. Yes, sir. He pulled a napkin from the table and dropped it on the floor. You spilled some wine when you were pouring. Clean it up. I looked down. There was no wine on the floor. He was lying, creating a reason to humiliate me one more time. Sir, I don't see any... Are you calling me a liar? His voice was loud now, drawing attention from nearby tables. I said there's wine on the floor. I said clean it up. Now, Carla was giggling behind her hand. The directors were watching with varying expressions of discomfort and disgust, though I wasn't sure if it was directed at me or Arthur. This was the moment. The final humiliation before my resurrection. I could have refused, could have walked away. But I wanted Arthur to go as far as possible. I wanted witnesses. I wanted everyone in this room to see exactly who he was. So I knelt down. I picked up the napkin. I pretended to wipe the spotless floor. And I heard Arthur laugh above me, heard him say to Carla, "See, some people just naturally kneel. It's in their DNA." That's when the spotlight turned on. That's when Mr. Sterling walked to the podium. And that's when I stood up, dropped the napkin, and walked away from Arthur without a word, because I didn't need to say anything. In about 3 minutes, my revenge was going to speak for itself. I made my way through the crowd, heading for the bathroom where my transformation waited. Behind me, I heard Arthur say, "Finally, this is it, baby. Everything we've worked for." I smiled. Oh, Arthur, you have no idea. In the bathroom, I changed in record time. Every movement was precise, practiced. I'd rehearsed this. The uniform came off. The red dress emerged. Hair down, makeup on, jewelry in place, heels on. I looked in the mirror one final time. "Hello, CEO," I whispered to my reflection. I could hear Mr. Sterling's voice through the walls, muffled but clear enough. He was building up to the announcement, talking about legacy and vision and the future. I opened the bathroom door and made my way to the position I'd chosen earlier, a spot near the entrance where the spotlight would find me easily. Through the crowd, I could see Arthur standing at his table, straightening his bow tie, preparing for his moment of glory. I could see Carla clinging to his arm, already imagining herself as the CEO's girlfriend. I could see the directors watching, waiting, and I could see Mr. Sterling catching my eye and giving me the smallest nod. The spotlight began to move, and Arthur's world began to end. But he didn't know it yet. He was still smiling as the light swept past him, still smiling as it continued across the room, still smiling right up until it landed on me. And then, finally, wonderfully, his smile died. I started walking toward the stage, and with every step, I watched the realization crash over Arthur like a wave. His face went from confused to shocked to horrified to something that looked almost like grief, because he was losing everything: his job, his status, his girlfriend, his future. All to the woman he'd treated like a servant, all to his wife, the wife he'd hidden, humiliated, dismissed, the wife who'd just bought his entire world. I climbed the stairs to the stage, took the microphone from Mr. Sterling, and looked out at 200 faces. And then I looked at Arthur. "Good evening," I said. "I know many of you are surprised. Some of you are wondering who I am." Arthur was trying to stand, but his legs weren't working properly. Carla was staring at me with her mouth open, her champagne glass tilted and dripping on the tablecloth. "My name is Diana Bennett," I continued, "and I just bought this company." The room erupted in murmurs, whispers spreading like wildfire. "Bennett," someone said. "I like Arthur Bennett. Is that his sister? His cousin?" I let them wonder for a moment, then I smiled. "Some of you might recognize me from earlier this evening. I was working as a waitress, serving drinks, clearing plates, being invisible." More murmurs. I saw realization dawning on several faces. But what you didn't know, what most of you couldn't have known, is that while I was serving you champagne, I was also the person who'd just purchased controlling interest in this company, 51%, to be exact, which makes me not just an owner, It makes me the owner. Arthur was standing now, swaying slightly. Diana, what are you? And here's the other thing you didn't know, I continued, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. That man right there, Arthur Bennett, the one who just ordered $6,000 worth of wine on a company expense account before even knowing if he got the promotion. I paused for effect. He's my husband. The room exploded. The ballroom erupted in chaos, voices overlapping, chairs scraping, phones coming out to record what was rapidly becoming the most dramatic corporate announcement in the city's history. Her husband, Arthur's married, but he's been dating Carla Sterling for months. I watched it all from the stage, the microphone still in my hand, perfectly calm, while Arthur's world collapsed in real time. Carla was the first to recover from the shock. She turned to Arthur, her face transforming from confusion to fury. Husband! Husband! You told me you were single! Arthur's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Carla, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to me for 6 months? That you're married? Her voice was shrill now, carrying across the entire ballroom. I've been sleeping with a married man. Oh my God! Oh my God! She grabbed her champagne glass and threw the contents in Arthur's face. The golden liquid dripped down his perfect hair, his perfect suit, his perfect lying face. The crowd gasped. Someone laughed. Phones were definitely recording now. Carla, please, just listen! Arthur tried to grab her arm, but she jerked away. Don't touch me! Don't ever touch me again! She turned to her father, who was standing near the stage looking grimmer than I'd ever seen him. Daddy, did you know about this? Mr. Sterling nodded slowly. I did. Mrs. Bennett informed me of her husband's deception several weeks ago. It was one of many factors that influenced my decision to sell to her rather than promote from within. The director's table erupted in knowing nods and vindicated expressions. Robert actually started a slow clap that no one joined, but the smile on his face said everything. Arthur's face had gone from white to red. Diana, what the hell do you think you're doing? You can't just... I can't just what, Arthur? I cut him off, my voice amplified by the microphone. I can't just buy a company. I can't just reveal that the ambitious junior analyst who's been playing office politics is actually a married man who's been cheating on his wife with the boss's daughter. Which part can't I do? You don't have this kind of money. This is insane. Where would you even... My great-aunt Miriam died 3 months ago. She left me $5.6 million. Remember Aunt Miriam? The woman whose funeral you refused to attend because you said it would be a waste of a Saturday? Arthur's jaw dropped. You inherited millions and you didn't tell me. I didn't tell you, I said calmly, because I wanted to see what you would do if you thought I had nothing. And you know what, Arthur? You showed me exactly who you are. I gestured to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about my husband. 3 years ago, he married me and promised to love me, honor me, cherish me. For the first year, he was decent. Not great, but decent. Then he got hired here at Sterling Corporation, and everything changed. I started counting on my fingers. He told everyone at the office he was single. He hid me from company events. He called me embarrassing and told me I didn't fit in with important people. He spent his salary on designer clothes and Italian shoes while I counted coins to buy groceries. He started coming home late, smelling like perfume. And when I questioned him, he called me controlling and unattractive. Arthur was shaking his head. Diana, stop. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? I'm making a scene? I laughed, and it echoed through the ballroom. Arthur, you made me work as a waitress at your company party. You snapped your fingers at me. You ordered me to clean your shoe when I accidentally spilled champagne on it, even though you deliberately stepped into my path. You made me kneel on the floor in front of your colleagues to wipe up wine that wasn't even there. The crowd was completely silent now. Even the people who'd been whispering had stopped. You humiliated me, I continued, my voice dropping lower, more dangerous, over and over and over again. And you did it because you thought I was powerless. You thought I was trapped. You thought I had nowhere to go and nothing to my name. You thought you could treat me like garbage and I'd just take it because I had no other choice. I leaned forward slightly, gripping the podium. But here's what you didn't know, Arthur. While you were plotting to use Carla to get a promotion, I was plotting to buy the entire company. While you were telling your college buddy that she was annoying but useful, I was in negotiations with her father. While you were ordering $6,000 wine you couldn't afford, I was signing papers that made me your boss. Arthur tried to speak, but nothing came out. He looked like a man watching his own execution. And tonight, I said, my voice rising again, tonight you made me serve drinks to the directors you wanted to impress. You made me pour wine for the colleagues you wanted to prove yourself to. You made me invisible so you could shine. But what you didn't realize, Arthur, is that while you were performing, I was observing, I was listening, I was learning. I turned to address the directors' table directly. Gentlemen, did you know that Arthur has been embezzling small amounts from client accounts? Nothing huge. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Just enough to fund his wardrobe and his car lease and his expensive dates with Carla. Arthur went pale again. That's a lie. It's not a lie. I pulled out my phone and held it up. I have bank statements, transaction records, everything. I've spent the last 3 weeks doing what you should have been doing, Arthur. My job, I audited the accounts of every analyst in your department, and guess whose numbers didn't add up? Mr. Sterling stepped forward, his face grave. Mrs. Bennett provided me with extensive documentation of financial irregularities in Mr. Bennett's accounts. We've had our legal team review everything. It's damning. The room erupted again. Directors were standing now, voices raised in shock and anger. Embezzlement was serious. Criminal, career-ending? Arthur was backing away from his table, shaking his head. No, 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 this is wrong. You're framing me. I'm not framing you, Arthur. You framed yourself. Every fake receipt, every adjusted invoice, every client expense. That was actually a personal purchase. It's all documented. And it's all going to the authorities. Carla was crying now, mascara running down her face. Daddy, is this true? Was he stealing? Mr. Sterling nodded. I'm afraid so, sweetheart. Mrs. Bennett discovered it during her due diligence before the purchase. It's one of the reasons I was so eager to sell to her. She has the integrity and attention to detail this company needs. Arthur was frantically looking around, as if searching for an exit or an ally or a way to wake up from this nightmare. Diana, please, we can talk about this. We can work this out. Work this out. I stepped down from the stage, moving closer to him. The crowd parted. You want to work this out now? Now that you know I have money and power? Now that you need me instead of the other way around? Where was that attitude when I was crying alone in our apartment because my husband told me I was embarrassing? Where was that when you forgot our anniversary 3 years in a row? Where was that when you made me work as a servant at your company party? I was standing right in front of him now, close enough to see the sweat on his forehead, the panic in his eyes. You had 3 years to treat me with respect, Arthur. 3 years to love me the way you promised. 3 years to be a decent human being, and you failed. Every single day, you failed. Diana, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No, you're not sorry. You're just sorry you got caught. I turned back to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what's going to happen now. Effective immediately. Arthur Bennett is terminated from Sterling Corporation. Not just fired, terminated. Which means no severance, no references, and a notation in his file that he was dismissed for cause due to financial impropriety. Arthur made a choking sound. You can't do that. I have rights. I have a contract. You had a contract. It included a morality clause and an honesty clause, both of which you violated spectacularly. Our lawyers have already reviewed it. You have no grounds for appeal. I smiled coldly. You're done, Arthur. Furthermore, I continued, addressing the room, anyone who assisted Mr. Bennett in his schemes, anyone who looked the other way, anyone who enabled this behavior, I strongly suggest you come forward in the next 48 hours. There will be an internal investigation, cooperation will be looked upon favorably, obstruction will not. The directors were nodding. Several junior employees in the crowd looked nervous. Arthur had clearly not worked alone. As for the rest of you, I said, my voice softening slightly. I want to assure you that this company is in good hands. I know many of you are concerned about new ownership, about changes, about job security. Let me be clear. I bought this company because I believe in its mission and its people, the honest people, the hardworking people, the people who actually earn their salaries instead of stealing them. I paused, letting that sink in. There will be changes. There will be audits. There will be accountability. But there will also be fairness and respect and a workplace culture where everyone, from the CEO to the newest intern, is treated with dignity. Someone in the crowd started clapping, then another person, then more. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. Not everyone, obviously. Arthur's friends and allies stood silent, probably calculating their own exposure. But enough people were clapping that it felt like vindication. I turned back to Arthur one last time. You wanted me to know my place, Arthur. You wanted me to serve you. Well, congratulations. You got your wish? I served drinks. I cleared plates. I made myself invisible so you could feel important. I leaned in close, my voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. But the difference between you and me is that I was playing a role. You weren't. That's actually who you are. A small man who can only feel big by making others feel small. I stepped back and raised my voice to normal volume. Security, please escort Mr. Bennett from the building. And Arthur, don't come back. Not to this building, not to our apartment. My lawyers will be in touch about divorce proceedings. You can pick up your belongings next week under supervision. 2 security guards appeared at Arthur's elbows. He tried to pull away, but they held firm. This isn't over, Arthur shouted as they started to move him toward the exit. You can't do this to me. I'll sue. I'll fight this. Diana, you can't just... I already did, I said simply. And then he was gone, dragged through the ballroom doors while 200 people watched, his protests fading into the distance until there was nothing left but silence. Carla was still crying, being comforted by her father. The directors were talking in low, urgent voices. The rest of the crowd was stunned, processing what they'd just witnessed. I walked back to the stage and picked up the microphone one more time. I apologize for the dramatic nature of tonight's announcement, I said. I'm sure this wasn't the elegant transition of power you were expecting, but sometimes justice isn't elegant. Sometimes it's messy and public and uncomfortable, and sometimes it's absolutely necessary. I looked out at all those faces, some shocked, some impressed, some still calculating what this meant for them. I am your new CEO, and I promise you this, I will be fair. I will be transparent, and I will never, ever forget what it feels like to be underestimated. Thank you for your time. Please, enjoy the rest of your evening. I set down the microphone and walked off the stage. Mr. Sterling met me at the bottom of the stairs. He was smiling. That was magnificent, he said quietly. Absolutely magnificent. Thank you for trusting me, I replied. Thank you for proving I made the right choice. He gestured to the crowd. I think you've made quite an impression. That was an understatement. People were already approaching me, some to congratulate, some to introduce themselves, some probably to assess whether they were safe from the coming audits. But I didn't care about any of that right now. Right now, I was riding the high of finally standing up for myself, of taking back my power, of refusing to be invisible any longer. I'd spent 3 years being small. Tonight, I'd learned how to be big. And Arthur learned that the woman you underestimate might just be the woman who destroys you. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, introductions, and the careful dance of corporate politics. But I wasn't just observing anymore. I was participating. Leading. Robert, the director who'd called Arthur a climber earlier, was one of the first to approach me after the announcement. He extended his hand with genuine respect. Mrs. Bennett, that was the most satisfying thing I've witnessed in 30 years of corporate life, he said. Your husband, your soon-to-be ex-husband, has been a thorn in this company's side since the day he was hired. The fact that you had the patience to let him hang himself before revealing your hand, that's real leadership. Thank you, Robert. I've actually been hoping to speak with you. I've reviewed your division's performance records. You've consistently exceeded targets while maintaining the highest employee satisfaction scores in the company. I'd like you to consider a promotion to Executive Vice President of Operations." His eyebrows rose. "You've already reviewed personnel files?" "I've been preparing for this role for weeks. I didn't buy this company on a whim, Robert. I bought it because I intend to run it properly." I smiled. "And that means promoting people based on merit, not politics." He shook my hand again, firmer this time. "I'm in. Whatever you need." That set the tone for the rest of the night. One by one, the real workers, the people who'd been buried under Arthur's posturing and office politics, came forward. They saw an opportunity for actual meritocracy, and they wanted to be part of it. But not everyone was happy. 3 of Arthur's closest associates, junior analysts who'd clearly benefited from his schemes, left the party early. I made note of their names. They'd be the first ones called in for interviews during the investigation. Carla eventually composed herself enough to approach me. Her makeup was destroyed. Her pink dress somehow looked deflated, and her eyes were red from crying. "Mrs. Bennet," she said quietly. "I didn't know he was married. I swear I didn't know." I studied her for a moment. She was young, spoiled, and naive, but I didn't sense malice, just foolishness. "I believe you," I said. "Arthur is very good at lying. He's had years of practice." "I feel so stupid. I actually thought he loved me." "He loved your last name, and your father's company. You were never a person to him, Carla. You were a stepping stone." I softened my voice slightly. "Learn from this. The next man who pursues you, make sure he wants you, not what you represent." She nodded, tears starting again. "I'm sorry for laughing. Earlier, when he made you clean the floor. I thought it was funny. I didn't know." "You didn't know I was a human being with feelings? Or you didn't know I had power?" The question came out sharper than I intended, but it was honest. Carla flinched. "Both, I guess. I've been an entitled brat my whole life. Daddy's always protected me, given me everything. I never had to think about how other people felt. Then maybe this is your wake-up call." I gestured around the ballroom. "All these people, from the executives to the waitstaff, they're all human beings with lives and stories and dignity. Remember that?" She nodded again and walked away, looking smaller somehow. Less like a cartoon villain and more like a girl who'd just learned a very expensive lesson. Mr. Sterling joined me as I watched her go. "You were kind to her." "She's not the real villain in this story. She's collateral damage." "And Arthur? Arthur is exactly the villain. He made his choices. He lives with the consequences." Mr. Sterling chuckled. "You know, when you first came to me with your proposal, I wasn't sure. You had the money, the credentials, the motivation, but I wondered if you had the steel. The ability to make hard decisions. To be ruthless when necessary. And now I know this company is in the best possible hands." He raised his glass. "To the new CEO, long may she reign." We clinked glasses, and I took a sip of champagne. The same champagne Arthur had ordered me to serve hours ago. It tasted like victory. The party continued for another hour. I worked the room, learning names, making connections, laying the groundwork for the massive changes that were coming. Some people were wary, some were excited. All of them were watching me carefully, trying to figure out who I really was. I was figuring that out too. Finally, around 11 p.m., I made my exit. I'd arranged for a car service, a sleek black sedan that was waiting at the front entrance. As I walked through the lobby, my Louboutins clicking on the marble floor, I passed a mirror. I stopped and looked at my reflection. The woman looking back at me was confident, powerful, in control. Nothing like the woman who'd arrived at this building 6 hours ago in a polyester uniform with her head down. But she was also nothing like the woman who'd spent 3 years making herself smaller to fit into Arthur's vision of who she should be. This woman was someone new, someone I was still getting to know. I liked her. The drive home was quiet. I'd already arranged for a locksmith to change the locks on the apartment. Arthur's belongings would be packed by a service and delivered to wherever he ended up. I didn't want to see him again, didn't need to. When I walked into the apartment, it felt different, lighter somehow. Like Arthur's presence had been a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying until it was gone. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff from my own collection, not the cheap bottles Arthur bought. I sat on the couch and finally let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The fear, the anger, the satisfaction, the grief for the marriage I'd thought I had, the relief that it was over. I cried for about 10 minutes, not sad tears, cleansing tears, washing away 3 years of being made to feel less than. Then I dried my eyes, pulled out my laptop, and started working. There were emails to send, policies to draft, an investigation to launch, a company to run. I worked until 3 a.m., fueled by adrenaline and vindication, and the pure joy of finally being in control of my own life. 3 months later, the Sterling Corporation, now officially renamed Bennett Sterling Corporation, was thriving. The investigation had revealed that Arthur hadn't been the only problem. 3 other employees had been quietly let go. 2 had been prosecuted. The rest of the company, freed from the toxic culture Arthur had fostered, was more productive than ever. I'd implemented new policies, transparent salary bands, anonymous reporting for harassment, mandatory ethics training, a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and abuse. Employee satisfaction scores had gone up 40%. Retention was the highest it had been in a decade. Quarterly profits had increased. And me. I'd moved out of the apartment I'd shared with Arthur and bought a penthouse downtown, modern, minimalist, and entirely mine. The divorce had been finalized last week. Arthur had tried to claim he deserved half of my inheritance. The judge had laughed him out of court. He'd walked away with nothing except his legal fees and a criminal record. I heard through the grapevine that he'd taken a job as a waiter at a mid-tier restaurant across town. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Carla had apologized again, more sincerely this time, and asked if we could get coffee. I agreed. She wasn't my friend, but she didn't have to be my enemy. She was trying to grow. That deserved acknowledgement. As for me, I was learning how to be Diana Bennett, CEO, not Diana Bennett, wife of Arthur. Not Diana Bennett, the invisible woman, just Diana. I was learning how to take up space without apologizing, how to lead without second-guessing, how to be powerful without being cruel. And I was learning that revenge, when done right, isn't about destruction. It's about justice, about refusing to let someone make you small, about standing up and saying, no more. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment on the ballroom floor. Arthur standing over me, demanding I clean his shoe, the napkin on the ground, the feeling of humiliation burning in my chest. And then I think about what happened next. The red dress, the spotlight, the look on his face when he realized who I really was. I smile every time, because Arthur wanted me to serve him. He wanted me on my knees. He wanted me invisible, powerless, broken. But I wasn't any of those things. I was patient. I was strategic. I was playing chess while he was playing checkers. And in the end, I didn't just beat him. I took everything he wanted and made it mine. The company, the respect, the power, the future. He thought he was the king. He forgot that the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. 6 months after the gala, I was having lunch at my desk, reviewing acquisition proposals, when my assistant buzzed. Mrs. Bennett, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent. Who is it? A pause. Arthur Bennett. I sat back in my chair, considering. I could have security throw him out, I probably should have, but curiosity won. Send him in, but have security wait outside the door. Arthur walked into my office looking like a shadow of himself. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by an off-the-rack button-down and khakis. His hair was longer, less styled. He'd lost weight. He looked tired. He looked defeated. Diana, he said quietly. It's Mrs. Bennett or Ms. Bennett. We're not married anymore, Arthur. He flinched. Right, Mrs. Bennett. I wanted to talk to you. You have 5 minutes. He sat down without being invited, then seemed to realize his mistake and started to stand. I waved him back down. No point in petty power plays. I'd already won. I wanted to apologize, he said. For everything. For how I treated you. For what I did. For all of it. I waited. There had to be more. I've been going to therapy, he continued. Court-ordered, because of the embezzlement charges, but it's actually helped. I've been working on understanding why I did what I did. The narcissism, the need for control, the way I tore you down to make myself feel bigger. That's good, Arthur. Growth is important. I was wrong. About everything. You were never the problem. I was, and I'm sorry. I'm truly, genuinely sorry. I studied him for a long moment. He seemed sincere. Maybe therapy had actually worked, or maybe he was just a better actor than I'd given him credit for. Is that all you came here to say? No. I also wanted to ask if there was any chance, any possibility, that you might consider giving me another opportunity. Not with you. He added quickly. I know that's over. I know I destroyed that. But maybe, professionally, I've been working as a waiter for 6 months. I'm good at it, actually. Turns out I'm good at serving people when I don't think I'm above them. But I miss the business world. I miss using my brain. There it was. The real reason for the visit. You want me to give you a job. Not here. I know that would be impossible. But maybe a recommendation, a reference. Something that could help me get back into the industry. I leaned forward, elbows on my desk. Arthur, let me make sure I understand. You embezzled from this company? You lied to everyone? You psychologically abused me for 3 years. You made me work as a servant at a company party and humiliated me in front of 200 people. And now you want me to help your career. He had the grace to look ashamed. When you put it that way, there is no other way to put it. I stood up. My answer is no, Arthur. Not now. Not ever. You made choices. You face consequences. That's how the world works. Please, Diana. Mrs. Bennet. And no. You took my dignity for 3 years. You don't get to ask for favors now. He stood too, anger flashing across his face. The old Arthur, the real Arthur, showing through the therapy speak veneer. You know what? Fine. I tried to be decent. I tried to apologize. But you're just going to hold this over me forever, aren't you? You're going to destroy my entire life because of a few mistakes. A few mistakes. My voice went cold. You didn't make mistakes, Arthur. You made choices. Every day, you chose to lie, to cheat, to abuse, to steal. Those weren't mistakes. That was who you were. Maybe who you still are. I've changed. Then prove it. Go build a life without using me as a stepping stone. Go earn people's respect instead of demanding it. Go be a good person because it's the right thing to do, not because you want something in return. I walked to the door and opened it. And go do it somewhere else. This conversation is over. Arthur stood there for a moment, trembling with rage or shame or both. Then he walked out without another word. Security escorted him from the building. I went back to my desk and returned to my acquisition proposals, mind already moving to the next decision, the next challenge, the next victory, because that's what I did now. I moved forward, I built things, I led people, and I never, ever looked back at the man who'd tried to make me small. They say living well is the best revenge, but sometimes living well and destroying your enemy's life are the same thing. Arthur wanted a servant. He got a CEO. He wanted someone beneath him. He got someone who bought his entire world. He wanted me to know my place. And now I do. My place is at the top. If this story taught you anything, I hope it's this. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Never assume that someone who's been beaten down will stay down. And never, ever forget that the person serving your drinks might just own the building. If you enjoyed this story of revenge served ice cold with a side of justice, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because I have so many more stories about people who underestimated the wrong person. Hit that like button if you think Arthur got exactly what he deserved. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated? How did you prove them wrong? Remember, it's not about being petty. It's about being powerful. It's about refusing to accept less than you deserve. It's about knowing your worth even when everyone else has forgotten it. Thank you for listening to Diana's story. And remember, the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting everything.